Hello. This is Jake Klipsch, calling in from scenic Rojava. Okay, we're in the barracks, so not really much to see here, but I'm on a MFS base outside of Hasake. I was in a training academy taking a rest after the rock operation. I just moved here tonight. We should be moving out sometime soon to one of the last places where there is still Dash, and that will probably be the last fight of the fight against Dash. Um, what comes next? Obviously, something I want to talk about. Like I said, my name is Jake Klipsch. Amongst the Kurdish units, I'm called the Lil America. Here with the Assyrians, my name is Ario Assyriani. This is my second trip to Rojava, or because we're including everybody now, we're calling it the Democratic Federation of Northern Syria. Rojava refers to the Kurdish areas. But it is a confederation composed of Kurds, Arabs, Assyrians, Yazidis, etc., etc. I'm leaving someone out, I'm sure, because there's a lot of ethnic groups in Syria. And under the aegis of this confederation, they are starting to come together, not only for self-defense in the case of Daesh, but to form their own local governance, self-defense, that type of thing. As I said, this is my second trip here. My first trip was in 2016. I came at New Year's of 2016 and then did the training there with the YPG, with the YPG. At that point, I went to the Shaddadi operation, waited 3 months, did the Manbij, the operation, did the meat grinder, Manbij meat grinder. After that, I went to Drybalus, was mildly injured with shrapnel, went home around a year. Came back here in July, end of July, for the last half of the rock operation, which we completed a couple weeks ago. And now I'm looking to go to the last bit of the fight with Dash in the Deir ez-Zor area. So as I said, this was supposed to be live. Technical difficulties. This is Rojava. These things happen. I'm going to be going over some questions just in video format. So, some more personal history stuff. I was U.S. military for 2 years, from 2002 to 2004. I did help prepare for this, but at this point, I'm pretty acclimatized to the way they do things here. I'm basically SDF. So, minus useful language skills. I can't speak Arabic. It's really, really incomprehensible to me. So why did I decide to go to Rojava in the first place and join the YPG? Because my first replacement was with the YPG for 10 months in 2016. I wanted to go back in 2015 when people started coming. I saw Daesh kind of sweeping through Syria and Iraq. The main reason was Daesh. I looked both at the KRG Peshmerga and I looked at YPG, and I liked the YPG's their paradigm of self-governance. They had a plan for after Daesh. I liked the revolutionary ideals. The KRG government to me seemed to be more of the same, more of the Middle Eastern corruption. You have one strong man, etc., etc. I liked the ideals of the revolution, so I went with the YPG, and I never looked back. Um, yeah, and then the second time that I came here, most recently 3 months ago, um, my main motivation was the people I lost in Manbij. I want to say, of the foreign fighters that I was with, the most of the time in Manbij, half of them did shaheed. There were a few injuries. My Kurdish friends at that time, many shaheeds, both in the Manbij operation and then in the following year. You know, at least every week or two, there was someone else that I knew and some that I'd been close friends with that shaheed. So I couldn't sit at home anymore. I wanted to get some justice and come back to Raqqa and help finish with that operation. But that's basically my story for this. I'm here to see the end of Dash, and then I want to see and participate in what happens next after this. This is the important part for Rojava at this point. This is it, because this will make or break what happens here. What do I do on a typical day? That's the other question. Well, that just depends. On the front, I will do a lot of guard duty. Occasionally, we do combat operations. We'll go forward and take territory. Most of the time is going to be spent guarding a position. That's just normal. It also depends on the speed of operation. Hopefully, in the operations we're going into, they're going to be rapid. We're going to be taking territory and just knocking it out. That's what we did in the Goons and Manbij. Shaddadi was lightning quick. Yeah, Raqqa was moved kind of at a snail's pace, but it worked out because you know the Raqqa front was a lot less lethal than the Manbij front was. So that slow pace actually did kind of pay off. But that's on the front. In the rear, I'm either doing rest or training. If I'm with a Yepigay Tabor, I might not even participate in the training. A lot of it's going to be ideological. But I mean, I've taken some of their anti-terror training, firearms and weapons training, things that the Tabors have done in the past. I've participated with. Here with the MFS, I basically went to them, and 20 minutes later, I went to the front, and I'd been at the front with them, except for a few 2 or 3 day rest periods. I'd been at the front the entire 2.5 months that I'd been with them. I was always at the front. So this rest period, I just rested. I didn't do anything. I just ate and slept and was on the internet. So, yeah, that was my typical day then. So what is the situation in the cities that I enter? Are they totally destroyed? Are people coming back? This is actually a question from Firat Ozkan. I have skipped questions here. I'm actually going to come back to that. Okay, so what are some of the things that the world should know about Rojava and they are not being covered by the media? Well, the first thing that the media should be covering about Rojava is the existence of Rojava. This is specialty knowledge to the rest of the world. Not only that, but its role in the defeat of Daesh. Everyone seems to know who ISIS is, but if you look at the media coverage, especially in America, they will refer to Kurdish militias or Arab militias, etc., etc. Very rarely will you hear the YPG by name. Not only that, but in the areas that it does control, I don't feel like it's gotten a totally fair hearing. I mean, the problems we highlighted, of course there's problems. Every endeavor has problems. This is just the state of the world. But it does have a stabilizing effect in the areas where it comes into. You're no longer going to see beheadings. You're no longer going to see the persecution of minorities, women, children, etc. The party does do very well at putting an end to that. You'll also see things like free speech. And some examples of this are you'll go into a party area and you'll see signs of Barzani on storefronts. You'll see signs of Bashar al-Assad on storefronts. People have the liberty and the freedom to express themselves, as you should in a free society. You know, these store owners, these private individuals are not harassed for having a different political viewpoint. Even when the Yepigay has in the past had open conflict with the regime, it is still no problem for one of its citizens to display their affection for the regime. So that's something that I've never seen highlighted, that I've seen personally, and other people have noticed too. I mean, it would be nice if the media talked about some of the basic principles that the revolution stands for. You know, basic equality, ecology, and egalitarianism. I would, like I said, I would first like to see the media at least cover its existence more often than it does, and then maybe grow from that. But it is especially in America, the media is pretty abysmal. So, what do you think supporters can do in our own countries to support the cause? Okay, the main thing that needs to happen as far as supporters within other countries is contact and dialogue with the government, with your home government. Okay, that's critical. Let them know, let your representatives know that this is something you support, this is important to you, and also to rally public support as much as possible. Do media work, go hold a sign, that kind of thing. But the main thing is to make contact with your host government and express that this is an endeavor that you'd like to see supported, or at least not be exterminated. So, what are some of the most interesting experiences that I've had while I've been here? This is very difficult to categorize. I mean, I've had really interesting experiences here, sometimes almost daily, and then of course there's periods of not much. But the first time I ever went to the Jeppe, the front, it was the Shadadi Jeppe, and I showed up with no rifle, as did a friend of mine. We showed up into Daesh territory without weapons. They armed him quickly. And it took me 2 days to finally acquire a rifle when I got to the front. That was a good time, kind of stressful. I was intensely sick, had a fever, and wasn't functioning very well, and didn't speak Kurdish very well yet, and was trying to bumble around and get a weapon. It was just a good time. Yeah. I've made some really exceptional friendships here. Both with local people. At this point I'll go to people's parents' house and have dinner. It's something that I'm doing now. It's cool. Meeting people from Syria, it's really cool. Hearing their point of view. Lots of people here speak English. It's good. And also, my friendships with internationals. I've had some of the best friends of my life here. Which has led to tragic experiences, which have been exceptional. Some exceptionally tragic things have happened here. People I've known that have shaheed. The language barriers is always interesting, especially I can get around with Kurdish. I'm about half and half on Kurdish. Arabic I can't hear. I don't understand it at all. And then there's all these varieties of Arabic. There's the Assyrian language and many others. It's really a melting pot, and it's very hard to get around if you didn't grow up here. And just in general, this is an exceptional experience. This is not something that people from the West see. This kind of disorder in a country and chaos in a country. And even less will people see the local people having a revolution and doing something about it. It's common in the world to see chaos in the country, but it's even less common to see anything constructive happening. It is a very exceptional time and place in history to be in. So, what are some of the most unexpected situations or events I've experienced, other than sneak attacks? I was guarding a berm in Shadadi with some friends of mine in a tabor. And we were Katyusha, and a Katyusha is a rocket weapon, and they're improvised. They make this whoop, 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 whoop sound. And I'd been Katyusha before, but again, it was when I'd first come to the front. I was very sick. I didn't even care. But they were maybe 2.5 kilometers out. They're very far away. And I saw smoke rise. I was on Nobachi. I was on guard, and I saw smoke rise, and I didn't know the Kurdish way to say incoming, so I go rocket, 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 and people looked at me funny. And I got down on the berm, and one impacted maybe 300 meters away. I'm like, oh, that didn't hit. They can't hit anything. Well, it was a volley. So they started landing towards the berm. One landed right in front of the berm, and one went whoop, 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 right behind us. Well, this had never happened to me before, so I immediately get this giant rush of adrenaline. Well, fuck this, I'm returning fire. So I get on the PKM and I pull it to 1,500 meters, and then pull it up in the air, trying to shoot at 2.5 kilometers, at this very distant, maybe 3 kilometers, this very distant Katyusha location. And all of alls are going, no, 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 no. And then my American friends are just, oh, Dalil, what are you doing? What are you doing? Yeah. It was an interesting time. And then I fell in a hole. Yeah. Stepped right in a hole, landed on my face. It definitely was a moment of pure Rambo. Pure Rambo, yeah. But anyway, things that have surprised me, the behavior of Daesh does at times surprise me. I've been around when Daesh were killing civilians, but I've also been in the middle of a long-range firefight. I think their nearest position was around 600 meters away, and they had guys further out than that. But we were exchanging fire. We've been doing it all afternoon. This was on the Man Beach front. And at one point, the village leader, Arab guy, comes out in the middle, in between us, raises his arms. Both sides, the Epigay side and the Daesh side, stopped firing and allowed this giant flood of civilians to pass between us. And once they passed, we started shooting each other again. But the fact that the Daesh guy could have been from that village, it's hard to say. But that surprised me, because that's not their reputation. And I've seen them do their reputation. I've been around when they were killing civilians. But that kind of surprised me, that they have a range of evil. That also, the fact that Daesh will surrender. They'll negotiate, they'll surrender. This is not their reputation. Of course, they have suicide bombers. They're around. But yeah, the leadership does not seem to be willing to do this, and they do surrender. And yeah, in a way, they're more logical and self-preserving than I thought they would be. The other thing that really surprised me is in the Rojava region itself is that the cities are functional. They have trade, they have supplies, they have new things. It's not, I mean, it is in a lot of places third world living still, but the borders are entirely shut off. Rojava is surrounded by enemies on all sides. The borders are shut. Official trade doesn't happen. I think most of the trade does go on with the regime, and that might have even increased. But yeah, despite being mostly closed off from the world, you can get whatever you want in Rojava. You want a new cell phone? It's there. You want to buy a car? It's there. All these things exist. And that just amazed me, that you could go into the city, the traffic's running. Amazing. So, finally, as far as this series of questions go, if I could talk to the leaders of the world about the situation in Kurdistan, Syria, and the Middle East as a whole today, what would I let them know? That is that changes are possible within the Middle East. It's not intrinsically a place of conflict. It's just a place populated by people, just like any other place in the world. It doesn't have to continue on with the past paradigm. It's possible for the people of the Middle East to start to control their own destiny at this point. In the past, it's been a center of colonization, and then in the past 50 years, proxies for great powers. In the past, the Soviet Union, now Russia, now China, the United States. A lot of proxy wars going on here. But I think it's possible for the people of the Middle East to shape their own destiny, and not as proxies to the great powers or the kind of playthings and toys of dictators, but as citizens of new democracies that are egalitarian and are part of prosperous societies. And this is something that I believe is possible here, and it is possible that it can spread throughout the Middle East. So this is something that needs to be considered by politicians and by citizens of other countries who are concerned or have a degree of empathy for what happens here, as well as the diasporas of the various ethnic groups that do come to the West as refugees. Something that really needs to get around. Okay, so I have some questions from Salami Avci. Does the SDF have plans for Abu Kamal Gate? No idea. Not an SDF command. What's going to go on with Afrin, Idlib? Well, this is the big issue. Because this is where Turkey is directly attacking Rojava, as well as their proxies. As they did in Al-Bab, they both directly attacked with artillery, armor, and air support. And then their proxies were serving as ground troops. Also in Jarablus. There wasn't a fight in Jarablus. Daesh basically traded uniforms in Jarablus is how that went down. And probably the most famous proxy of the Turkish state at this point has been Daesh. That's well known at this point that the foreign fighters of Daesh did pass through Turkey, were basically allowed to do it, and that arms, equipment, and material help has come from Turkey, as well as free range on the border. I was in Saluk, doing protection there because there had recently been a Daesh attack there, but that's an open point in the Turkish border where they had allowed Daesh and other groups to come across the border and attack the YPG positions in Saluk. And Saluk has never been repopulated because of this. People can't go back to Saluk because it's continuously under attack from the other side of the Turkish border. So it does affect people that the Turkish state is, if they're not directly helping, they're turning the other way. So what's going on in Afrin, Idlib, etc., is again Turkish proxies and direct conflict or direct attacks from the Turkish state. That slowed down due to pressure by the USA. That's been the only thing really stopping them up until this point. So we will see what happens after the fall of Daesh. If the USA decides to completely dump the effort it's put in here, then we will see Daesh-like Turkish proxies ruling the northern part of Syria, and we'll kind of be right back to where we started. Without the Syrian Democratic Forces, Daesh will return, maybe as a different name, and as they have in other places, as well as organizations like Nusra Front, etc. They will continue to thrive here without the SDF. Linking the cantons was another question that had been asked. We tried to do that in 2016. We're unable to do it because Al-Bab, which was our target, was then targeted by Turkish state and Turkish proxies. At that point, Daesh did fight back against them. They, found out they'd been betrayed or whatever, and they did fight back. And it took Turkish state months and months to take this tiny city. We'd actually taken Manbij in less time than it took them to take Al-Bab. So, have fun, guys. Let's see. I had questions regarding... Just a second. I wrote all this down. All right, I'm going to get to the questions of Ferhat Askin. I had questions regarding the United States and domestic fascism. I don't really want to get too much into all this at this point. I'm talking about Rojava, particularly about threats to Rojava, especially coming from the north. We can talk about the regime a little bit. Actually, let's talk about that now. The difference between the Turkish threat to Rojava and the regime threat to Rojava is it's very easy to sit down with the regime. I'm not saying they're reasonable, but they'll at least sit down and talk. They will negotiate. They're much more rational. They also live in Syria and probably don't want to sit down and rebel either. So, they're a different animal than the Turkish proxies are. So, anyway, USA domestic fascism. Yeah, it's an issue. It's growing. It's growing from a fringe thing to kind of a more alt-right pop thing. Yeah, that might have to be handled later. I really don't have a lot to say about that publicly right now. My focus is here. I also had questions about particular combat experiences that I've had here. Again, not something that I talk about publicly. If anything has been released about me publicly, it's because some of my friends are from southern states. And just, but yeah, whatever. It's not touching any of that with a whole belt of 7.62 by 54. Just not gonna approach it. So, I have questions from Firatoskin. What is the plan after ISIS? As far as the SDF goes, again, that's above my pay grade. Everyone is above my pay grade because I am a foreign volunteer. The plan after ISIS, hopefully, is going to be stabilization. I know that's been the goal of the SDF, especially as it is now composed of giant swaths of Syria, giant chunks of the Syrian people. The plan is stabilization. People want to come back to their homes, they want to clear the rubble, and they want to get on with their lives. That needs to be the post-ISIS plan. Now, whether or not the great powers and the regional powers will allow this to happen remains to be seen. But as far as I can see, that is the plan post-ISIS. Personally, my personal plans post-ISIS is I will continue to be here for 3 more months. I will see Deir ez-Zor to the end. Probably that will take a month, and then I'll be here another couple of months. So I will see what happens here. That is my plan. What are we doing with captured ISIS members? We're giving them chai and cigarettes. We're treating them pretty nicely, the ones that have been around, and they're generally willing to give us information. They're usually broken at that point. They're done with the caliphate, etc. The Syrian Daesh are being imprisoned for a short period of time, and then if they are not considered dangerous, or if they're not high ranking, they are released back into Syrian society. Mm-hmm. They're released back into their communities, who will then deal with them. There's been whole factions of ISIS tribal fighters who have just gone back to their communities, asked for forgiveness, and have been readmitted. Maybe this will be a problem, maybe it won't. High-ranking Daesh obviously are held. Foreign Daesh are held, and then if they are requested by their home governments, they will be given to their home governments. If not, they'll be held here. I think that's been the case with Jack Letts, as he was a Daesh guy from Britain, where the British government has not requested to be released, so he's still being held here. Okay, what's the situation in the cities that I enter? Are they totally destroyed? Are people coming back? People come back to places that are not destroyed. Raqqa has got large chunks of it that are not destroyed, especially in the goons outside, and people just come straight back. Large sections of the city are not destroyed, but they're heavily mined. They must be demined before people can come back. You just can't let people go back to heavily mined areas. They'll blow themselves up. It'll be horrible. The problem with that, I mean, some of our demining techniques, we just have to blow up the mines. That's the only way to do it without killing ourselves. So then that leads to more destruction. But that's not going to completely destroy a building. It basically just makes a mess. Then there's areas where the fighting was heavy. There's been a lot of airstrikes, and they are destroyed. They will have to be rebuilt and cleaned up. Yeah, cleaned up and entirely new structures brought in. It'll be a lot of work. But yeah, people come back. People come back very quickly. You'd be surprised how quickly someone can clean up their house, get the water back on, and open their little storefront. I mean, within days sometimes. The shops open back up. It's crazy. So what is the situation of the people in the Democratic Federation of Northern Syria? Is there enough food, medicine, and money? Okay, again, Rojava, or defense, whatever we're calling it now, is surrounded by entities that prevent trade, that prevent movement of goods and services, okay? Even though that is the case, people in general have food, okay? It's not always the best food. You're going to get canned meat instead of fresh meat, but you're at least going to have bread, cheese, tomatoes, and cucumbers. Staples are available. If you have nothing, you can be provided for free bread and water in Rojava, but there's plenty of other things that are available. And I mean, as I said, you can get anything here. I have not seen in this area anyone homeless. There again is a surplus of homes. If they are not in use under the kind of rules of democratic confederalism, you can use an unused structure. So there's no one sleeping on the streets here. It doesn't happen. The agricultural areas they're doing great. In the Daesh areas, it was interesting that I read that they're considering an agricultural revolution because under the regime, People are only allowed to grow certain things, certain staples that the regime can sell for money. Well, once the regime was kicked out of certain areas, most of the factions, including Daesh, including the party, including YPG, etc., say, okay, you're a farmer, you understand how farming works, farm, sell it, have at it. Well, they start growing more than one crop. They grow, a wide variety of things. They raise different animals. So they have mixed farms instead of just wheat farms or just corn farms or just cotton farms. And it's considered an agricultural revolution at this point in Syria, in all the areas where the regime has left. So that includes in Rojava. So you can find anything that is grown here, you can find here. So that's all the fresh meat. Of course, cheese is produced here. So yeah, it exists here. Medicine, most of it is produced out of Damascus. Sometimes hospitals are short of medicine. It's very common for them to be short. The pharmacies, on the other hand, where you pay for medicine, are fully stocked. You can get antibiotics, heart medicine, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, you get a prescription from a doctor, and you can go to the pharmacy and get anything you need that the hospital might not have. Money, I mean, there's obviously a local economy here. We trade on Syrian pounds. That's the money that's used here. It is still Syria. Um, I'm not fully. I know people from here, and I know that there's issues. Okay, there's bound to be issues in a war zone. There's bound to be issues when you're cut off from the rest of the world. But people are getting by. Um, there's plenty. I don't see starving. I don't see starving people, and I see plenty of people that are very well fed. There's plenty of big bellies and big butts in Rojava. Trust me. Okay. So that's kind of my assessment of the economic situation here: food, medicine, and money. Um, I think that was it for all of the questions. Hopefully, I covered everybody's that I saw, and hopefully that will be it. But yeah, just to wrap it up, going to Deir ez-Zor. Daesh is going to be done. Write your congressman about Turkey's actions in Rojava and in Turkey, because they really have, man, they really don't take care of people who aren't Turks. It's really a bad spot to be in if you're not specifically a Turk, or say you are. Yeah, especially for the Mountain Turks. But a primary goal needs to be the stabilization of Rojava at this point. The stabilization of Syria as a whole. The regime and the SDF need to come to the table. That's my opinion. I don't know what those two factions are actually going to do. Hopefully it is that they will sit down and hash out some kind of agreement to where the confederated areas can maintain a degree of autonomy while remaining part of Syria, which is the goal. The goal has never been to split from the state. And then Assad's not going anywhere. It's very, very unlikely that he's going to lose power at this point, but hopefully he has learned that he does need to be more of the carrot than the stick kind of ruler, because the stick failed him. I mean, he very nearly lost everything. And he was only able to persuade, a certain number of his own soldiers to even stay with him, especially at the beginning. So hopefully he's learned, when to butt out and when to just let things go and let them carry on naturally. So we'll see how that works out. That's going to be coming up in the next 2 months, I believe. But yeah, write your congressman, write your MP, whatever you call them in whatever country you're in. Go stand outside of their office with a sign. Be polite. Don't be an idiot. But yeah, this is something that needs to be done. Okay, I'm Jake Klipsch. I am the Little America. I am Audio Siriani. Biji Shoresh.